Hey everyone, welcome back to the Content Club podcast. We're on episode number 3 and I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who has tuned in so far and for everyone who has sent me some feedback. I really appreciate it. I'd love to know what you want me to talk about and maybe some of the things that you might want me to look at, and also if there's anybody in particular you think we should chat to in these podcasts, do let me know. That would be great. So today I'm going to be looking at about 14 tips for creating content for your business, because it can be quite daunting, especially when you're doing it yourself. Of course, you can call us at Excalibur Press, but that's not always possible for people. So we like to give you some top tips to get you off the starting block. So for me, when it comes to promoting your business, content really is king these days, or queen. But what does that actually mean? I suppose for some people, they know that there's this idea that they should be creating some form of content, but they don't really quite understand what that is. And not just that, it's so important that it's created quickly, effectively and efficiently. And it comes in many different forms. So everything from blog posts, web pages, social media, updates, video, photos, GIFs, memes, slideshows, stories, infographics. Literally content is anything that you're producing that is giving, for me, that has to give some value add to the customer. You might remember was it our last podcast? We talked about informing people, entertaining people, or inspiring people, and I stand by that. I do think that that's what people really want to see. It can become a minefield of confusion for most people, with hours and hours spent just staring at a blank Word document, hoping that all of that knowledge and expertise that you have can be transferred onto the page. And then once it's created, there's the big question of, well, what do I do with it now? What was the point of this? So here's some of my top tips. Hopefully they'll help you along. So subject matter and topic is really important. For me, you do not start a blog post unless you've looked at this. So regardless of whether it's a 500 word word blog post or whether it's a 50 word social media update, you really need to think about your customer. So you don't think about what you want to tell them, but more consider what they need to know. So select a subject matter that speaks directly to the customer, that's more likely going to grab their attention. And I suppose my second top tip would be to not overthink it. Just honestly, you've no idea the number of people who totally overthink content. And that leads to an awful lot of procrastination, and no one has time for procrastination. And then what that usually leads to is complicated, overwritten, and sometimes overly academic pieces. You really want to write your content as if you're speaking to the customer on the telephone or if they're sitting in front of you. That way, they can absorb it better, they can better understand it. And then there's one blog, so tip number 3 for me is a blog post formula that is the easiest one to do, and I will put together a template for this and I'll put it on the Content Club website probably over the next couple of weeks. So contentclub.excaliburpress.co.uk. So do keep an eye out. There is some top tips for this type of post as well. So it's a list-based post, and we do already have a piece of content up there with top tips on creating a list-based post. But what I will do is I'll create an actual template, one that you can just fill in. So with a list-based post in its very simplistic form, it is exactly what it says in the tin. It is a list. But what you want is a few lines of introduction or a couple of paragraphs at the beginning. And that just really introduces people to what they're going to get. And then you have your list. So your list could be some top tips. It could be hints. It could be things you need people to know. It could be problems that you've solved. It could be a step-by-step guide to doing something. For example, this podcast is essentially come from a list-based post, which you can find on the Content Club website. And then, of course, number 4, for me, you really want to make that one blog post go a little bit further than just uploading it to the website, because that's what most people do. They'll create their post, upload it to the website, and they'll go and grab a cup of tea. Think, that's me done. That's my content done for the day. And it really isn't. It's just not. So let's get out of that mindset to begin with. So when you're creating a blog post, just have in mind what else you can do with it. Can you create a slideshow? Can you create a little video or an infographic? Can you pull some information out of it to turn into smaller content pieces for social? And Canva is a brilliant tool for that. It's canva.com. I use it all the time. I swear by it. And for small businesses who don't have graphic designers or who don't have the time or the energy to learn graphic design programs, Canva is definitely the one you want to be using. And then what you do is you break that up, and in some cases you point towards the content, and then in some cases you use the little bits or the bite-sized chunks that you've created as independent pieces, and it allows you to keep that evergreen. We'll talk a wee bit more about what the word evergreen means in a later podcast, but essentially it is content that is always relevant and never really goes out of date. So number 5, you want to be getting it distributed. So it would be like, the Belfast Telegraph never actually distributing itself and sitting in the printers. It would be of no use to anyone. It would be like Belfast Live never putting a post on Facebook and letting people know that they've updated the website. So for me, distribution is really key. There's no point spending loads and loads and loads of time creating this beautiful content in any form if you don't have an audience to distribute it to. So posting on Facebook and Instagram, well, that's not really enough. So you want to think of different ways that you can get your content to people. And if you've got a really good piece of engaging content, it might be worth considering paying to advertise it. And what I would say is, I'm not talking about Facebook boosting. If you want an ego massage, go on Facebook boost. But if you want proper, measurable, advertising metrics, you really want to be using Facebook Ad Manager. You want to be using Google Ads, but not just that. You want to be using someone who is an expert in creating these ads, because although Google and Facebook and all of these platforms will make it sound like it's so easy and you can advertise on Instagram, etc., and Twitter, but yes, it is easy, but unless you're an expert and you know how to do it correctly, you're paying way too much for your advertising. So what I would say is, if you're not going to learn it like inside out, upside down and everything about it, or you don't have a natural talent for that, then I would consider paying the fee to engage someone who can, and I'm happy to recommend some people if you want to get in touch. So when in distribution, and also think about forums. So forums are not a thing of the past. They're still being used quite heavily. You've also got websites like Reddit that do help to increase, I suppose, the distribution. And massively important, which so many people forget, is to send that piece of content out to your mailing list. And if you don't have a mailing list, well, that's a whole nother podcast we need to have. So you do want to be collecting email addresses in this day and age, because if you're relying on social media to push out your content and push out your message, you may be bitterly disappointed in later years, because what's happening is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, Pinterest, all of those platforms, they're becoming more and more advertising led, and it's harder and harder for advertisers and companies and businesses and corporates to get their message out there. So you don't want to be left behind. So do try to capture that data yourself, and in some cases I'm saying to people, let's go back to basics. Let's find this mailing list, find our customer database, and send this information out to them. Another thing for me is using online content creation tools, and this is tip number 6. For me, Canva. I cannot stress enough how brilliant it is. But also there's ones like Flyer, which is spelled Flyrr, and I've got that on my mobile phone. It's a little bit like Canva. Then you've got, of course, you've got Instagram Layout app, which you can add to your Instagram. You've got Pic Collage. There's also iMovie, Ripple, RIPL. So there's lots and lots of different types of content creation tools that are fantastic. And once you get to grips with them, and some of them are really easy, like Quik, for example, Quik is a video creation tool, and you can create videos from stills. Why not take advantage of that? So definitely get yourself a few content creation tools, and even if you're only using maybe one or two, I would suggest maybe Quik and Canva would be two really good ones to start with. And then photography. So getting photography right for content is absolutely key, and we don't all have the budget to bring in a fantastic photographer. What I would say, and my advice to people, is try to create your own photography. Try to find the budget to get a really good photographer, and spend half a day creating a lot of content that can work. And again, I can recommend the people or person that I use. I'm happy to do that if you get in touch. But for me, when it comes to photography, if you don't have a photographer and you're not very good with the old iPhone or HTC or whatever it is that you have, try some royalty-free stock imagery. Be careful with stock imagery. I use it a lot, I'm not going to lie. It's to do with time, speed, getting the content out there. Don't spend all day down the rabbit hole trying to find the perfect picture. For me, on your, as you're scrolling through, take the one that's good enough for now. When you're getting started off, I would also really consider, so the websites that I use, pixabay.com, pexels.com, PEXELS, Pixabay is PIXABAY. You can also find a free ebook on my Excalibur Press website. So that's excaliburpress.co.uk. It's the top left-hand corner, I think. You can download 36 different royalty-free stock photo website URLs. So do get a good look at your photography, and do think about it, but don't spend all day procrastinating over it. And then tip number 8, so that was tip number 7. Tip number 8 is filters are your friend. Just coming on from the photography, there is a few sort of what would I say? Well, I have a few caveats. If you're advertising products, so say for example you're advertising, I don't know, a tea or something, be very careful about using your filters. There are legal implications of filtering imagery that is direct advertising. So you don't want to do that. The other thing is, think about if you've taken your own photos and they're just not perfect, try a couple of filters on them. What you might find is going black and white, or but that gingham filter softens up everything. It's great. So do have a wee think about those. So then tip number 9 is headlines. And when writing your blog post or subject line for your content, you want to keep it nice and snappy. So the research what other companies like yours are doing. Not just that, you could check out other online publications like BuzzFeed or Huffington Post, who, her Vice, I think, is another good one. These are all companies who have done the research. They know how to write a headline. So take inspiration from them. Use some of the language that they're using. There will be a podcast and a piece of content coming up over the next few weeks, possibly month, in relation to headlines. But for now, do just take some inspiration. There are headline generators out there. There's also different companies like HubSpot and Digital Marketer who have like lists of